source is defined as an injury that occurs to a client where the source is not immediately apparent when the injury is discovered. A high percentage of injuries of unknown source, once investigated, are found to be incidents of caregiver misconduct. Keeping the three categories of caregiver misconduct in mind, look at the upcoming case examples. Are you witnessing acts of abuse, neglect, or misappropriation, or an injury of unknown source? Even if the actions shown in these situations wouldn't be considered acts of caregiver misconduct, are there steps that could have been taken to prevent them, or other ways to respond? After each segment, the tape will be stopped so you can discuss what you observed. Case example 1. A client's care plan clearly states that any assisted lift is to be carried out by 2 caregivers. It's been a particularly hectic shift, and no one else appears to be available to help. The client needs to be moved. The caregiver is alone and has often executed such a lift single-handedly. It's no big deal. However, in the course of the move, the client shifts her weight. The caregiver loses her balance, and the client falls. The fall results in the client breaking a hip. Is this a case of abuse or neglect, or neither? How could this have been avoided? Case example 2. An Alzheimer's patient has been continuously pushing the call light. Each time the staff person on duty responds, there appears to be nothing wrong. Finally, exasperated, the staff person disconnects the call light and returns to other duties. Is this any form of caregiver misconduct? Are there other options? Case example 3. While providing home care to a client, a caregiver has occasionally needed to make long-distance personal phone calls. After a number of visits, the caregiver finds that the client usually requires up to a half hour in the bathroom. No assistance is needed during this time. This seems like a convenient time to take care of long-distance personal calls without the client's permission or knowledge. The caregiver uses the client's phone but always breaks off the conversation at once if the client calls for assistance. What do you have to say about this situation? Case example 4. A caregiver overhears a nurse aide coworker shout loudly to a resident, "Will you shut up? I am sick and tired of cleaning up your disgusting messes. You make me sick." The caregiver hears the resident begin to cry. Later that day, the caregiver notices that the resident, who is usually very outgoing and has a great appetite, just picks at her food and speaks to no one. What is going on here? What course of action, if any, would you suggest the caregiver who overheard the incident take? Case example 5. In this last segment, an alert client complains to a caregiver of a constant pain in her left arm. The caregiver says she probably slept on it and leaves her alone in the room. The next day, the client is crying with pain, so the caregiver reports the status of the client to the shift supervisor. An X-ray is taken and reveals a fracture. What could the caregiver have done differently? Could this be caregiver misconduct? All staff persons having contact with clients, and I mean everyone, must report incidents of suspected caregiver misconduct or injuries of unknown source to a person of authority in their health care facility. It is then the facility's responsibility to decide how to proceed. Sometimes an incident resulting in physical, mental, or emotional harm or misappropriation of client property is clearly the result of an action between caregiver and client, caregiver misconduct. At other times, physical or emotional hurt is evident, but the cause of the hurt is unknown. In the fifth case, for example, there was indeed an injury, a broken arm. However, the cause was unknown. Injuries of unknown source must also be reported to your supervisor. Healthcare facilities are required to report injuries of unknown source to the Department of Health and Family Services. The number of injuries of unknown source can be greatly reduced with prompt, careful reporting by caregivers. Let's say that in the course of a normal daily activity, an incident occurs that could later result in a bruise or other injury. A resident stumbles into a door frame. No abuse, no neglect, it is simply an accident. If a caregiver has witnessed the accident, checked on the condition of the client, and reported the event to a supervisor, there will be no injury of unknown source the next day. The health care facility will not be required to report the incident to the department because they have documented that the injury was not due to caregiver misconduct. The healthcare facility must investigate to try to determine if caregiver misconduct has occurred. They may ask for assistance from an outside resource, such as law enforcement. When a healthcare facility's investigation of an incident results in a clear case of caregiver misconduct, that incident must be reported to the Wisconsin Department of Health and Family Services Bureau of Quality Assurance, BQA. The healthcare facility must also report an incident to BQA if, after their internal investigation, they are still not 100% certain that caregiver misconduct did not occur. Once an incident is reported to the Bureau of Quality Assurance, BQA reviews the report to determine if a follow-up investigation will be completed. If the Bureau does decide to investigate, a notice will be sent to the caregiver and the facility. If the department determines that there is sufficient evidence to show that caregiver misconduct occurred, then the caregiver will receive a notice that the substantiated finding will be entered on the Wisconsin Caregiver Registry. The caregiver has the right to appeal this decision. If a substantiated finding is entered on the Wisconsin Caregiver Registry, the caregiver is banned from working in facilities regulated by the Bureau of Quality Assurance, unless approved under the rehabilitation review process. In addition, federal regulations permanently ban nurse aides with a finding of caregiver misconduct on the caregiver registry from working in federally certified nursing homes or federally certified intermediate care facilities for persons with mental retardation. Providing quality, safe, and compassionate care to our most vulnerable citizens is a responsibility with great challenges and great rewards. You live with that responsibility, those challenges, and those rewards every day you walk through the door. Taking care of yourself as a caregiver, taking a moment to focus, and taking time to reflect will help you continue to provide the fine health care service Wisconsin citizens know they can expect.